up in Santa Maria just because it's, just for, I think it's on balance more convenient to the public to have it up there, but I'd go either way.
Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor to have the meeting on August 5th at 9 a.m. in Santa Barbara? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Sure. Nay.
Okay.
What's the point of voting if you can't dissent?
Okay. Motion passes. Okay, now we need a motion to approve the consent calendar items 1 and 3.
So moved.
Second? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is change of organizations, item 1.
Chair Guyer and members of the Commission, change of organization item number 1 is to consider recommendations regarding LAFCO application 1505 for the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History reorganization, annexation to the City of Santa Barbara, and detachment from the Mission Canyon Lighting District, the Santa Barbara County Fire Protection District, County Service Area 12, and County Service Area 32.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a brief PowerPoint that I'd like to go over with you that talks about this reorganization. And it's basically an annexation to the City of Santa Barbara and detachment from some districts that do not serve within the city boundaries. And I've given you a map, and this is the annexation boundary. By way of background, the area proposed for the reorganization is approximately 5.2 acres in the west portion of the museum-owned property on Fiesta del Sol. It's owned by the a nonprofit corporation. The museum itself is a nonprofit, and it's located on Mission Creek in the Mission Canyon area. The City of Santa Barbara is the applicant on behalf of the museum. And the annexation reorganization proposal is within the sphere of influence. And the area is currently served with city water and sewer and other services by the city. And the museum has updated its conditional use permit, calling that a CUP, in the City of Santa Barbara, and has requested annexation so the property is within one jurisdiction and would be regulated by the updated CUP. No change in the use of the property is proposed or allowed by the amended CUP. And this is kind of small to read, but sorry about that, but the zoning in the county is for single-family residential, 20,000 minimum lot size, and one parcel, parcel 1 at 0.63 acres, 27,000 square feet would allow a maximum of 1 unit in the county. Parcel 2 at 4.95 acres would allow a maximum of 10.78, so approximately 10. Pre-zoning by the city is for a maximum density of 3 dwelling units per acre, and this would allow 1 unit on parcel 1 and a maximum of 14.85 units on parcel 2. The county zoning is more restrictive, but the CUP would still restrict future development without going through a discretionary permit process in the city. The city has prepared an environmental document, a categorical exemption for the annexation and general plan amendment, and has outlined some specific sections of CEQA. And these additional sections that LAFCO staff has identified will be included in the notice of exemption, and I worked with legal counsel on identifying some additional sections of exemptions for the annexation. And so we relied also on the factual justifications in the city's NOE and staff report, and they're included in Exhibit D. So we will file that. And these are the additional sections. I don't want to go over those. I don't know if legal counsel wants to talk about some areas. For instance, the slope is less than 20%, and so there are minor alterations to land and some other items. Do you have any comments on those? And we will file, as I stated, an NOE following your commission's action, should you approve this. There was also a property tax exchange negotiation between the city and the county, and they were agreed both to accept the exchange of property tax money. It's relatively minor, but the Revenue Tax Code still requires that the county and the city negotiate when you have an annexation. Conducting authority proceedings, the property owner, the museum, has consented to waive conducting authority proceedings, and the city of Santa Barbara, as the applicant, also consents to waive conducting authority proceedings. So therefore, a protest hearing, conducting authority hearing will not be required for the annexation if it's approved by your commission. In conclusion, I believe that this represents, the reorganization represents a reasonable and logical extension of the city limits, and would recommend that you approve option 1, which is to approve the reorganization, find that it's exempt from CEQA, and naming the reorganization with the detachments, and that the subject property would be liable for any existing taxes, charges, or fees or assessments that are levied within the county, or within the city of Santa Barbara, but not in the county. Subject property is uninhabited, although there is one residential unit. My staff report said there was no residential units, but there is one. It's vacant currently. And because all landowners and the annexing agency consent to waive conducting authority proceedings, that should be included in your commission's action. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hood, could you go back to your second slide? That was the larger map. And if you have a pointer, because I think if you could explain the parcels and the exactly what we're talking about, because you went through this slide fairly quickly, and I think it's
This one may be better.
important.
So
Well, I actually think the other one, and then maybe both are important, but I think this one is significant.
actually maybe a better exhibit if you'd like me to get that. Commissioner Wolf, we don't have the overhead, unfortunately. We would need to scan
Okay.
this and maybe bring
Well,
it back.
why don't you, that would be fine. Why don't you just start then with the other one that you wanted to talk about?
Jacqueline? Okay, there are basically three APNs included in the reorganization, but two parcels. And the parcel that is proposed to be annexed is 5.28 acres. The museum property is over in this area, the remainder of the property with the museum on it. And that's what this slide would probably show you that better than the one that we have on the screen currently. What else would?
Well, okay, so, and then the little piece up to the left is what? That's the other parcel?
Yes, it is.
Okay, are you calling that parcel 1 or parcel 2? Are you delineating those?
Oops. I'm not sure what the name of it is. Maybe the applicant could,
All right, we'll wait for the applicant.
0.63
to-
acres. Parcel 1 is a 0.63,
Okay,
which is the smaller one.
all right. And now then, go to the other slide. Okay. And the arrow is pointing to the area that you just showed us.
Right, the city limits is in green. It's not a very good map.
It's really not a good map.
Right.
And
This one's better.
maps are really important
Okay.
for us. And I don't know if the applicant, I'm hoping will have a better map when they come forward. Anyway, thank you.
Any other commissioner questions? If not,
Mr. Chair, may I inquire? Is it the better form to ask questions of the staff after the public comment?
We can do that too.
I mean, whichever is your preferred protocol. I have a couple of technical questions.
Ask it.
I noticed in much of the correspondence from the Mission Canyon residents that there was a reference to the road and to an improvement to an intersection. And I could not find a diagram showing where that intersection improvement was and where in the permitting process the intersection improvement is. And did it get approved? Is it segmented or what? And if that seems to be the locus of the concern with Mission Canyon Road, if we could clarify that.
I think that's a question for the city. We, don't get involved in land use issues, and, we cannot condition an annexation upon any land use changes because LAFCO does not have the authority to do that.
Yeah, I understand that. I just want to know if the project that the city approved with a CEQA exemption involved any changes to the fire egress from Mission Canyon Road and hence potential impacts on fire safety. If it didn't, then we don't have to worry about it. If we did, I think it's a real legitimate concern.
Okay.
So,
Maybe the city can address that in their presentation. Okay. Continue on with the presentation.
Chair Guyer, could I ask a question of staff before we
Yes.
get going? Thank you. Mr. Hood, kind of taking a step back and looking at this from a macro point of view, it's always been interesting to me that the city boundaries are that far south. I think most of the time you think that the city boundaries are just to the south of Foothill Road. So all that area that's in the county now, including these parcels up to Foothill Road, are in the city's sphere of influence, but just not annexed yet, right?
That's correct. Particularly this parcel is in the sphere of influence.
And they're all served by city services, as
It's
these
city-
parcels are.
City water and sewer.
Okay,
And I'm assuming that emergency response and safety would also be the first responder.
okay. This issue has come up before with annexations from the city. I'm just wondering, when LAFCO kind of looks at, what is an orderly change rather than just a few parcels at a time or not.
Well, we had the sphere of influence review for the city of Santa Barbara about 3 months ago, and we did not make any changes to the sphere of influence or the municipal service review at that time. If we want to become more proactive, maybe we could take a look at eliminating some of these areas that are problems, not only here, but around the county.
Okay, well, I just think that it's kind of interesting. I know some of the comments said, we're just kind of doing things in a piecemeal fashion, and then we end up with these conflicts between what the city's plans are and what the county's plans are. But I'm assuming not just these parcels, but that whole unincorporated area there south of Foothill is still all served by city services. Okay, thank you.
Okay, for a matter of procedure, the first three speakers are going to have 10 minutes each, and then the public speakers will each have 3 minutes.
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, our first presentation and speaker will be Susan Ellich on behalf of the museum.
Good afternoon, Chair Guyer and LAFCO commissioners. It's a pleasure to be before you today. My name is Suzanne Elledge, representing the Museum of Natural History. And just as a point of order, I am, before I get going, I would like to know if we will be given a few minutes after the presentations to respond to anything that we've heard, either during the presentation of the people opposing the annexation or after public comment. We would just like to have a few minutes, and I'm wondering if we could request that.
At this time, no.
May I ask then to follow the presentation by the people opposing the application? And I'll tell you why. I'm not trying to be difficult. The thing is that the application by the museum has been in process for 8 years. We have read all the material that's been submitted to your commission, that's been submitted into the record. There's a lot of misinformation, and unfortunately, the people who are opposing this application did not participate for those 8 years. We saw them for the first time at the annexation hearing at the city last August, and there truly is a lot of information that is misunderstood. And I want to be sure that when you make your decision, you are clear on the facts, and so I'd like the opportunity to respond, if I could. So either with a few minutes after their presentation, or I'd be happy to follow them.
Can you cut your 10 minutes down in time?
I think we've got about a 10-minute presentation. I understand that the city of Santa Barbara is not going to be presenting. They're just here for your questions. So I think we've got some extra time.
Okay, how about 1 minute?
Pardon me?
1 minute
You'll give me 1 minute?
for a rebuttal?
My goodness. Okay.
Point of order. I mean, are we, if they're the applicant, why couldn't they respond to issues that may arise during the presentation? I don't understand why we wouldn't let them do that.
1 minute.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Bill Dillon for County Council. I was just going to offer any commissioner can have questions for the
Ask
applicant and
questions.
invite the applicant back
Right.
up to answer those questions. So
Right.
that would be in addition to the 1 minute you just granted.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to kick off our presentation. I'm going to introduce the CEO of the Museum of Natural History, Mr. Luke Swetland, and then I'll be following with a presentation.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Good afternoon. My name's Luke Swetland, President and CEO of the Museum of Natural History and Sea Center. Thank you for considering the matter before you. For 100 years, the museum has been the Central Coast's leading institution dedicated to the collection, study, interpretation, and presentation of the rich natural heritage of our region. Our collections number in excess of 3.5 million specimens and continue to grow. Annually, we provide school group tours to over 20,000 school children from the entire Tri-County region. Our scientists conduct internationally recognized research, and we annually serve over 200,000 residents and visitors at the Museum and Sea Center. Folks come to our museum to learn more about the natural world and to come to love it. So what? Every natural history museum in the country does this. What makes your Museum of Natural History so unique? What differentiates us from other great museums? The Field Museum in Chicago, the American Museum, the LA County Museum. All those great museums sit in the middle of concrete. Your great museum here in Santa Barbara sits in the middle of nature, the very thing it exists to interpret. And Mission Creek and our oak woodland are integral pieces of the museum our visitors experience every day. Why is this so important? All of our exhibitions and programs rely upon the outdoor experiences of our site. That's what provides opportunities for school groups and daily visitors to more fully and authentically engage with nature. Having an oak woodland where visitors can walk, smell at their own pace. These are powerful and foundational tools in our ability to connect families, adults, and children with nature. Our oak woodland is a living laboratory. It is both a metaphor for and an agent of our mission. In those woods, the museum provides a classroom, but nature provides the curriculum. The next generation of environmental stewards is being created out of the experiences young visitors have connecting with nature there under those woods. Now, the museum has owned and been a good steward of those woods for 40 years. We've voluntarily maintained the woods and the trails, and not just allowed, but encouraged the community to make free use of those woodlands. As part of our overall master plan and the conditional use permit that we worked with the city at their request, we believe it's time to bring the woodlands under the same jurisdiction as the museum complex. When that happens, the museum's entire campus will be governed by the conditional use permit that was granted by the city last year. This annexation will ensure that our continued stewardship of this resource can be better managed into the future. And now I'd like Suzanne Elledge to say a few words about the detail of why this annexation is beneficial for our community, and then I'll be back up to close our presentation. Thank you. Suzanne?
Okay. Thank you, Luke. Okay, let's start with some basics. So this is the assessor parcel map, and I hope I can answer the question that Commissioner Wolf asked earlier. So you see parcel 39 up in the left-hand corner of the highlighted area, parcel 66 in the center, and parcel 68 at the bottom. That highlighted area represents the area that is the subject of this application. There are 3 assessor parcel numbers, but only 2 legal parcels. Parcels 66 and 68 make up 1 legal parcel, and parcel 39 is the other. This is an aerial map of that same area. You see the yellow highlight representing the area that's the subject of the application. There's been some information submitted that I think somehow leads people to believe that this would be the first sort of encroachment into Mission Canyon, if you will, property being annexed, and other than the museum property. And I just want to point out that the little skinny parcel, the blue parcel at the bottom that says 1915, that is also owned by the museum, and it was annexed to the city in 1915. And it goes to the north side of Mission Creek in that location. Then you see the museum's complex, the larger area that says 1968. They also own property that's up in the left, right there. That's where the director's residence and other residents are. But the museum property, everything to the west of the subject property, I'm sorry, to the east of the subject property was annexed in 1968. And then the parcel highlighted in blue that says 1982, that is the Hills property, another residential property in the area that was annexed to the city in 1982. There's also been a lot of discussion about zoning, the density, and the development potential. So I want to review this with you. There is a difference in the zone designation between the county and the city. Currently, the area is zoned 20R1. That requires a 20,000 square foot minimum lot size. The city does not have that same zone designation. What they have is a zone designation of 15,000 square feet minimum parcel size, and that is the zone district that surrounds this area for properties that are already within the city. But as I'm going to hopefully explain to you, I believe, and I think that planners would tell you, that the zoning is not really what's key here. This particular property is so constrained, if you will, by sensitive habitat that it is the overriding factor in what could be done with the property, not the underlying zoning. When we were processing our application through the city requested that we do an assessment of development potential by comparing city policies with county policies. And our biologist, Mark de la Garza, did submit that analysis. And the reason the biologist did it was because of the biological resource constraints that exist on the property. So he did his analysis and concluded that the city and the county have equally robust biological resource protection policies, and that no matter which jurisdiction you are in, the policies are so protective that very little could be done on this land. And he concluded that 1 single family residence per legal parcel is what could be done. And as I explained, this property that's the subject of the annexation has 2 legal parcels. One of those parcels already has a single family residence on it. So under either jurisdiction, in the opinion of the person who understands the biological resource protection policies, there is potentially 1 additional unit, regardless of the underlying zoning. So this is a copy of our biological resource constraint map that was part of the biological resources assessment that was filed with our application and with our plans to the city of Santa Barbara. I know you can't read that legend, but I'll just tell you that everything in green is coast live oak woodland, and everything in blue is coast live oak sycamore riparian woodland. Again, everything you see outlined in yellow, this is the subject property, and it is completely covered with biological resources. I'm going to point out that a couple of things that were allowed by the city for us to do in this area, if the annexation is approved, is an enhancement to the bioswale that exists, goes through the woodland, and then this sort of brownish orange color is a boardwalk that leads to the bioswale and will be an educational opportunity for people visiting the museum. Both of those things were found to not have any kind of impact on biological resources.
Okay, you have 1 minute left.
Okay, so let me go quickly then through the conditional use permit that was approved by the city offers additional protections beyond the biological resource policies that I just mentioned. It restricts the activities. These are a direct copy of the conditions of approval that go along with the city CUP. The top one talks about this kicks in upon annexation. The second one talks about how only a single-family residence, passive recreational uses, and educational uses are allowed in the woodland. The city CUP mandates free public access. Again, the museum has been providing free public access for the 40 years that it's owned the property. It encourages access, but the CUP that has been approved now mandates that the museum continue to do that. There was a copy of that policy. Uniquely, when we were talking with community members about our project, the Mission Canyon Association requested that we pull in the biological resource policies of the Mission Canyon Community Plan into the city's approved CUP, which we did.
Okay,
And those policies are shown here.
If you can wrap it up, your time is over.
Can I, point of order, please?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that we allow them an additional 2 minutes to present, mainly because of the issue of the mapping that I think was important for us as commissioners to understand, and that was something that was brought up, that even the map we had wasn't as adequate as it could have been. So I would just respectfully ask that we give them 2 more minutes to finish up.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might also just add that I understood that the city and the museum were co-applicants that would each be given 10 minutes. The city's not making a presentation. I'm making the presentation, so I will go as quickly as I can. Okay, the city CUP also mandates that the existing trail network that exists through the woodland be maintained. And this exhibit shows that. I would outline it for you, but I don't want to take up too much time. All the brown area are the trails that will be maintained subject to the CUP. I put this rendering into the presentation because I want you to see a lot has been made about this area not being protected if it goes into the city. And I want to point this out. This is an artist's rendering of the frontage improvements that have been designed along Puesta del Sol. The city required that safe access be provided to the entry to the museum. And we worked with Public Works and actually got them to change their standard condition of approval, which would normally require concrete sidewalk, curb and gutter, et cetera, because that would not be compatible in the Mission Canyon area, and it would not be compatible with the historic wall that you see in this rendering. So this is the resulting design that was approved by the city's Historic Landmarks Commission recently. It's lovely, it's compatible with Mission Canyon. The people opposing the annexation actually do like this design, and this is the result of the museum being sensitive to what's appropriate in Mission Canyon, as well as the city. There is incredible widespread community support for this project. There has been throughout the processing of our application, which is not to say there weren't issues that needed to be resolved along the way. There was, but the final design was wholeheartedly supported by the community. I want to point out that the two neighborhood organizations that have been around forever, who have boards of directors, who have bylaws, who are organized and do their homework, have submitted letters of support for the annexation. They represent over 600 households in Mission Canyon, and that the decision makers before you gave unanimous approval to this annexation, both the City Planning Commission and the City Council, unanimous support for the annexation. There's key considerations, just to summarize them. The landowner wants this, and LAFCO put this property in the sphere of influence. I couldn't find the exact date, but I know that it's been in the sphere of influence since at least 1996, and I think it predates that. The balance of the museum's property has been in the city since 1968. They're a museum. They operate over their entire land holdings. They should have a CUP under one jurisdiction under which their operations are regulated. The city, the county, and your own body anticipated that this reorganization would occur and that it's logical and reasonable. The recent tax exchange negotiations between the city and the county were successful. And in my analysis of all of the applicable policies and standards in your guidelines, this project meets all of those and I think has earned your support. I'll wrap it up right there. And I would like to come back. And I think actually Luke has just a concluding remark, and then we'll be wrapped up.
Okay.
Next, we have Renee Brooke, who is representing the City of Santa Barbara.
Mr. Chair, is it fair to say that after the public comment, we can ask questions of the applicant?
Yes.
To the extent that they're not cleared up during the testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm Renee Brooke, City Planner for the City of Santa Barbara and the applicant on this subject annexation. I don't have a lengthy presentation. Much of what I was going to say has already been presented by your executive officer and the applicant on behalf of the museum. I would just point out the city has issued a CUP for the bulk of the museum complex. A CUP has been in place for some time. The recently approved CUP continues to manage and oversee the museum operations. There are, of course, certain restrictions and conditions of that CUP that would not be triggered until or if this annexation is approved, because obviously the city wouldn't have jurisdiction over the western parcels. But there are conditions of approval in the CUP subject to those, that those western parcels would be subject to should this be annexed. Also, any revisions to any of the requirements for the CUP would have to return to the city's planning commission for review or amendment to the CUP. So just want to make that point. There was a question about the Mission Canyon corridor improvements. So I'll just wrap up by stating what I do understand about the status of that project. This is the Mission Canyon Road corridor area over the historic bridge and a little bit beyond. That property is within both the city and the county jurisdictions, and city and county staff have been working together for quite a few years on very conceptual designs and public outreach for how that corridor might be improved to accommodate all modes of transportation. It's very early in the concept design. Our city council just recently allowed staff to seek grant money to continue conceptually designing any improvements in that area. It is subject to Historic Landmarks Commission review of the portion that's in the city. So just to allay any concerns that particular corridor improvement project is very early and conceptual.
Can I just see if I understand this correct? There is an ongoing project, I guess, which is in the concept stage, which when it ripens into a definitive project, either the city or the county or both will issue some kind of notice and determination and make a determination whether you're going to do a separate CEQA analysis and hearing procedures so that any public concerns about the fire egress and the relationship between the museum events and how hard it is to get out Mission Canyon and public safety concerns of that can be addressed at that time?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Stark, that is absolutely correct.
And would that be true whether or not we deny this application or grant this application to annexation? The road project's going to proceed along its path anyway, is that right?
That's true. There are two separate projects and applications.
Thank you.
And I actually don't have anything more to add from my presentation. I can answer any
Commissioner
questions,
Savick?
though.
Just to clarify a couple things. You said that without annexation, the current CUP wouldn't extend to the western portion of the property. Did I hear that correctly?
That's correct, Commissioner Rivas. Because the city would not have jurisdiction over the western parcels, the city-issued CUP and its requirements and conditions would not apply to those parcels.
Okay. But the city of Santa Barbara is currently providing all the services to the eastern end of the property.
Correct. Both eastern and western side of the museum complex are served by city sewer and water.
And tell me, if you can, how many public meetings have we had on this with the city's process with this project, including planning commission, city council, et cetera?
The museum representatives might have a more accurate number, but if I were to guesstimate, between planning commission, council, and HLC, probably upwards of 20 to 25 hearings.
Okay. I'd like to hear that from the applicant later.
Commissioner Farr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here and representing the city. So I'm kind of trying to get to the core issue, which seems to me it is a land use issue, not necessarily a LAFCO issue, but as long as you're here. So what I seem to be reading from some of these letters is that everybody loves the woodland parcels the way they are now. They want them in their natural state. They don't want them developed. They want them protected. They want public access protected. Right now, they're in the county, so they would be subject to the county's density zoning and any applicable policies from the Mission Canyon plan, right?
Correct.
So if let's just go worst case scenario. The museum decides that they want to develop those parcels. Then they would have to come through the county. The county would analyze the application and base their analysis on whatever the existing, county zoning and plan policies are. Because there seems to be a sense here that the museum and the city won't protect these parcels as well as they feel that the county has, even though the museum has actually owned these parcels for a long period of time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So now, and as you mentioned to Commissioner Aceves, if the property is annexed, then all of the mitigations and the conditions that are in the city's conditional use permit now extend into the annexed area, which includes conditions of approval for the protection and for the public access that could only be changed through new staff analysis, new application, new series of public meetings.
That's correct.
Is that the process?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Paulina Kahn and Roseanne Crawford.
Good afternoon, Chairman Geyer and members of the board. Paulina Kahn and myself, Roseanne Crawford, appreciate the opportunity to address you on behalf of the Coalition to Preserve Mission Canyon. The museum campus was annexed in 1968, and as you can see, it is an outlier encroaching into Mission Canyon. To the left are the undeveloped acres, the woodland parcels. The museum properties have operated under both city and county for many years. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
I would like to, with the pointer, wherever it is, however it works, show you that right here, going from right to left, is where Mission Creek is and where the Mission Ridge fault line goes, which is an embankment. That is the natural boundary between the city and the county. Second slide, please. Yes. This slide shows part of the woodland acres to be annexed. If annexation were allowed, another museum peninsula would be created. To the left and to the right are Los Encinas Road easements. To the far left and the far right are private county property owners who do not want this annexation to occur. And then the third slide. Mission Creek and the Mission Ridge Fault vary between 20 and 50 feet high embankment. At the edge of the western undeveloped parcels, both creek and fault run the full length of the museum property and is the natural boundary between city and county properties in this sensitive oak habitat.
These undeveloped parcels are not integral to the operations or reorganization of the campus and have been used primarily for passive recreation, dog walking, bird watching, mostly by the neighborhood. These parcels are located in the city of Santa Barbara's sphere of influence, as is all of Mission Canyon, even above Foothill, and eligible with no annexation to receive the same city water and sanitary services already adequately provided. Public access for decades has been acknowledged by the museum. The updated signs since the annexation application make no reference, however, to public use, and fencing has been extended. Conditional use permits can be altered with a change of director, change of museum board, or city council if annexed, possibly as other priorities develop, not necessarily in the public's interest. The general public first became aware of the annexation application plans when the Planning Commission recommended this annexation to the City Council earlier this past year. As you can see in item B, the density that they're recommending is higher than if they were remaining in the county, with the maximum development density as 1.8 units per acre versus, as compared to the city, with the maximum development density of 3 units per acre.
This is the Mission Canyon Community Plan. In recognition of the special character, history, and appeal of Mission Canyon, in particular, Mission Canyon Road and adjacent properties from Rocky Nook Park to the intersection of Foothill shall be designated as the Mission Canyon Scenic Corridor. The website for the Mission Canyon Community Plan on page 21 states that the museum parcels under county jurisdiction are designated residential, but operate as a quasi-public open space next to Mission Creek. This area is also a very high fire hazard area. Both of these issues would be important in any future changes. Increased traffic would also be a concern in this semi-rural area. Annexation would create conflict with the Mission Canyon Community Plan, a county document. Yes, my next slide. We do not support piecemeal annexation. Should the museum want to operate under one jurisdiction, it could simply return the campus to the county jurisdiction. All the Mission Canyon for years has received city municipal water and sanitary services and is also located in the city's sphere of influence. Museum's western parcels receive the same services as all of Mission Canyon. There would be no change in delivery of services with or without annexation. With or without annexation, one possibility to protect this open space long-term is to require it be held in a conservancy or conservation easement, legally safeguarding against the development and maintaining public use access.
The Coalition to Preserve Mission Canyon opposes the following from the county to the city of Santa Barbara: annexation of the Natural History Museum's woodland western parcels, easement of a portion of Las Encinas Road, the right-of-way on Mission Canyon Road to the city from Mission Creek Bridge to Puesta del Sol. Sensitive habitat for birds, oaks, and open space remain better protected under the county zoning and the Mission Canyon Community Plan. We sincerely want to, in closing, thank you for your time and consideration regarding this long-term land use decision. Thank you.
Thank you. The commissioners have any questions for the presenter?
I don't have a question of the presenter, but I did have a question about the slide, maybe two back, that had the 3 bullet that go down. That right there. And to Mr. Hood, we are only considering the first bullet.
That's correct.
The first 2 bullets.
So can you clarify that?
There, it's just the first bullet, the annexation. It's actually reorganization, but we don't have authority to approve any kind of easements, open space easements or whatever. That's not within LAFCO's jurisdiction. That's a city or county issue.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. And the third bullet?
Again, that's a city or county issue. We had an explanation of that from the consultant.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you.
If I could follow up on Supervisor Wolf's question, Mr. Chair. So the various letters that are in the file from the different law firms concerning who's got the right to the easement and whether it's excessively burdened and whether the trail loops through or not, that's really not before us. Is that correct? Or for the, I guess for Mr. Hood, or through the chair.
That's correct. It's the reorganization that's before you today.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could clarify the question that was just answered. If we could go back to those 3 bullets, the first 2 bullets are actually before you today. The easement in Las Encinas Road is the easement that's between the 2 parcels that I pointed out. The legal parcel, perhaps we should go back to my presentation if we could, and I'll just point it out to you with the pointer. Between assessor parcel number 39 and 66, there is a private road easement, and that is the segment of Las Encinas Road that it's interior to the museum's parcels, and so it is part of this reorganization. But not the Mission Canyon Road right-of-way, that is not.
Mr. Dillon.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Stark, consistent, I think, with that comment is the reorganization is presented as it is, and the status of that easement, whether it's burdened or overburdened, is not before LAFCO. Ms. Elledge is simply pointing out it is on the property subject to the annexation, but that dispute about the scope of an easement is not going to be decided by LAFCO. That's not before you.
That would be between other parties than LAFCO, is that, to the extent there is a dispute.
That's exactly correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to point it out graphically, so what I was referring to and what I think that bullet point was referring to is this is a private road easement that exists between parcel 39 and 66. And so being within the boundaries of this reorganization that's being requested, it is part of the annexation or the reorganization.
Thank you. Okay, now we have 12 speakers.
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, we had 2 late additions, so we have 14 requests to speak on this item, and we are going to start with Stephen Sherrill, but I believe he has left, so we are going to go with Elizabeth Guerrero, to be followed by Victoria Smith.
Good afternoon, members and committee. My name's Elizabeth Guerrero of Mission Canyon. I just would like you all to take into consideration that many people live in Mission Canyon, and they do not belong to the Mission Canyon Association. The recent letter of support from the Mission Canyon Association is not reflective of other populations or their views within the residence area of Mission Canyon. Thank you.
Victoria Smith, to be followed by Barbara Lindeman. Is Victoria here? Okay, we are going to go ahead to Barbara Lindeman, to be followed by Fred Sweeney.
Chairman Geyer and Commissioners, I'm Barbara Lindeman. I'm the immediate past president of the Mission Canyon Association. In response to the previous speaker, let me just say that Mission Canyon Association is open to all the residents in Mission Canyon, and we distribute a regular newsletter. We have, over the years, talked about this issue of the annexation in our newsletter, so I'm sorry that there were members who felt excluded by that, but it certainly was open to everybody. The Mission Canyon Association has been very much concerned for several years about the proposed annexation. And 2 years ago, as the museum was preparing its CUP, we met regularly with CEO Luke Swetland about our concerns, and we're very happy that the museum addressed all of them. We were mostly concerned about the environmental protection for the Oak Woodland area and wanted to make sure that under the new CUP it would have the same protections as it would enjoy when it was in the county. And we knew there were some discrepancies between the city protections and the county. And so the CUP was written, really incorporated fully all the things that are in the county environmental regulations, and also was in accordance with the Mission Canyon Community Plan. We are particularly concerned to protect the Oak Woodland area, the Sycamore Woodland area, and the riparian area there, and to protect access for the public. And so, as has been said to you already, the CUP includes the agreement that the Creekside and the Oak Woodlands will be open to the public, and that the museum will maintain public trails, and we insisted that a map be included so it'd be very clear exactly which trails would be open. And I might add that if the property is not annexed and the CUP does not go into effect, the area will actually not have these protections in it. They'll have what is covered by the county regulations, but the museum would be perfectly free to close off access to the public, which they have been, which they could have done at any time during the last 40 years that they've had it. So I feel confident there are actually some added protections in the CUP that was approved by the city. Thank you very much. We are in favor of annexation. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Fred Sweeney, to be followed by Bobby Kinnear.
Good afternoon, Chair Geyer, Commissioners. It's always nice to come into this room. The forerunner of the firm I retired from as senior design partner just actually designed this room in this building. So we go back a ways. I come to you today as chair of the board of directors of the Upper East Association. I have submitted a letter on behalf of support of this reorganization. As some of you may know, the portions of this project or this area that are in fact in the city of Santa Barbara, and therefore by definition are a part of the Upper East neighborhood as defined by the general plan of the city of Santa Barbara. And as such, our mission as a neighborhood association is to preserve the character and nature of our neighborhood, this being a part of that. So we're very much in support of this reorganization. I think that allows, as the Mission Canyon Association just said, allows us to continue the protection of that area. I think it's important that the commissioners, if they choose to deny this organization, would have to find compelling evidence and compelling argument that would say that not allowing this reorganization would do harm to the neighborhood, do harm to woodlands and do harm to the community surrounding Santa Barbara. I think that's the thing that the commissioners must weigh in making their decision. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bobby Kinnear, to be followed by Don Oken.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I am the chair of the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History Board, and as chairman of the museum board and a longtime trustee and docent, I have supported the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History for more than 40 years because, one, the museum has always endeavored to fulfill its critical mission of informing residents of Santa Barbara and beyond about the unique natural history of the area, providing educational programs for children and hosting community forums on relevant issues involving our natural world and even more. Two, the museum has the most amazing staff and volunteers, many of that you know as supporters. Three, while working through the recent city review and approvals process of new master plan and CUP, the museum has worked to ensure its long-term position as a successful institution while not in any way jeopardizing the important needs of the neighborhood or the community more broadly. Through dozens of open community meetings, monthly discussions with the Mission Canyon Association, and lengthy, honest dialogue with several neighbors who had concerns about the museum, we listened and we responded to address every reasonable concern. We look forward to operating under our new CUP under a single jurisdiction and turning our full attention and our donor resources to operating your museum for the benefit of all. Please remember, the museum was founded by the community. The museum was founded for the community. Help us be more efficient as we continue to serve our community. Many people are here that want the annexation to be approved, and I'd like for them to stand. They're not speaking, but I'd like for all of them to stand, please. So all of those that are here in support of the museum, please stand. Thank you very much, and thank you all very much. I urge you to approve our proposed annexation. In fact, I implore you to approve the proposed annexation, and thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Don Oken, to be followed by Greg Gorga.
Good afternoon, Commission members. I'm Don Olson, former city planner for the city of Santa Barbara. I'm currently retired and am president of the Mission Heritage Trail Association and a board member of the Upper East Association. The mission, or the museum, lies within the boundaries of the Upper East Neighborhood Association and as will the parcels of land that are before you today for annexation to the city of Santa Barbara. Given my knowledge of the annexation standards and criteria, the annexation of these parcels seems to me to be a no-brainer. The parcels before you today are owned by the Museum of Natural History, which is already within the city of Santa Barbara. The parcels lie within the city's sphere of influence. They receive city water and sewer services. And once they are annexed, will be subject to the CUP already adopted by the city, which includes the protection standards that were included in the Mission Canyon preservation plan. These basic standards should lead you to approve this annexation, which I strongly support. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Greg Gorga, to be followed by Tom Jacobs.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Greg Gorga, Executive Director of the Santa Barbara Maritime Museum. The Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History is the only nonprofit that I know of that currently has its campus under two different jurisdictions. This annexation will preclude the need for the museum to go through a long and costly process of negotiating a CUP with the county for the woodlands. That time and funding can be better utilized serving and educating the youth of our community. The CUP the museum recently set up with the city includes all the protections necessary to ensure the museum remains a good steward of these parcels. They repeatedly have shown their concern to their neighbors and for their footprint in our community. As a fellow museum leader, I have spoken on behalf of the museum during every stop of this process, at Planning Commission, at City Council, and here today, and I urge the Commission to quickly and definitively approve this annexation so that the leadership and staff of the Natural History Museum can return their full attention to meeting their mission of service to our community and those they serve. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Tom Jacobs, to be followed by Nancy Martz.
Chairman Geyer, Commissioners, I'm a former board member. My name is Tom Jacobs. I'm a former board member of the Mission Canyon Association and former chairman of the Mission Canyon Association Architectural Review Committee. For many years, I've been involved in the Museum of Natural History's master plan process and am honored to sit on the museum's master planning committee. I support the diligent planning work that has resulted in crafting a renewed CUP through an open process that has involved many participants and point of view and ensures the continuing stewardship of this vitally important and historic community resource. The museum now finds itself at the final stage of this process with the request for the annexation that is before you today. It is abundantly clear that it is in the public's and the museum's best interest to now transfer jurisdiction of that portion of the museum's property that has been in the county to the city via the annexation process. The new CUP lays out the conditions of the operations of the museum's property that is currently inside the city. It follows that the city should similarly dictate the conditions that should apply to the museum's adjacent woodland area. The museum property is a mashup of irrational historic boundaries that just no longer make sense in light of the new CUP. Good governance dictates that a unified jurisdiction is the most rational and puts the decision-making in the appropriate body, the city. For over 7 years, this discussion and evolution of the museum-city partnership has been at the public forefront. It's not a new thing. The museum has voluntarily adopted significant safeguards to protect and enhance the woodlands for future generations to experience, enjoy, and learn from. What could be a better outcome? I say to those concerned with the details, the CUP is well-crafted, fair, and maintains the historic neighborhood access to the meandering trails and provides appropriate restrictions on development. The resolution of the museum's annexation process will be a good thing. Let's get down to business and finish the work at hand. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nancy Martz, to be followed by Lauren Carey.
Commissioners, thank you. My name is Nancy Martz. I'm here today to support the museum's application for annexation of the woodland area. I live in San Roque, just 4 blocks away from the museum. I have 2 sons, ages 13 and 9, and we've been members since my older son was 18 months old. I also have a dog, and he and I love to walk through the woodland area several times a week. The museum is a wonderful steward of this hidden gem. The trails are well maintained while still being kept natural. It is a quiet place in the middle of a rather busy neighborhood. It's our little oasis. Following their mission to inspire a thirst for discovery and a passion for the natural world, the museum knows that keeping the woodland wild makes it a great extension of the museum campus. When members return time and again to the woodland, they see, as my family has over the years, a full creek become an empty creek and then fill up again. A large, strong, meandering tree begin to crumble and lose branches until it simply returns to the earth. The woodland is the essence of natural history. In addition to looking at millennia of nature carefully preserved under glass in the museum buildings, children can see seasons and other natural changes occur in front of their own two eyes. They can ask questions, form hypotheses, and get answers from their parents or helpful museum staff. Furthermore, the CUP includes provisions that the museum must maintain the woodland trails and make them accessible to the public at no cost. Think of that. What a gift to the community. People who are looking for a break from the beach, families like mine who are awake and ready to go long before the 10 a.m. openings of everything in this town. We have a delightful, inviting, and yet wild and natural place to go. It's a good idea to bring this space into the city to be regulated under one jurisdiction. This will bring continuity to the pieces of land that the museum stewards. Dual jurisdiction is more cumbersome and complex than it needs to be, and the museum has proved to be a good steward. Please vote in favor of the application for annexation. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lauren Carey, to be followed by Paul Rellis.
Good day, Commissioners, Mr. Chair. My name is Lauren Carey. I live on the lane adjacent to the museum parking lot. I've walked these woodlands since the early 70s. I'm not in support of the city and the Santa Barbara Museum's application for annexation of the parcels known to me as the woodlands. I believe it is important that these parcels remain under county control. LAFCO has a responsibility to preserve land resources and discourage urban sprawl. There is no guarantee the parcels will not be developed. Under the city's sphere of influence, these parcels could easily be developed with modifications. An example of this is the small triangle parcel in the 200 block of Hope Avenue. This particular parcel had similar circumstances surrounding for the development, such as creek setbacks and a trail. The city has approved 8 modifications so that that parcel could be developed as high-density housing. Annexation into the city is not in the best interest of our community. The annexation of these parcels come with no guarantee to the public that the parcels will remain as open space, never to be developed. In addition to this, I do not think that the Mission Canyon Association's recommendations should be considered, since the president now just happens to be one of the past directors of the museum and remains on the board of directors. This is a conflict of interest. I am not a member of the organization, and they do not represent me. The museum has a history of slowly encroaching on its neighbors, ever so slowly. I hope that you can see down the road and not provide the museum with their request to annex these parcels. We do not want any risk of further development in these woodlands. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Paul Rellis, to be followed by Nancy Bertelson.
Chairman and members of the Commission, my name is Paul Rellis. I'm a recent member of the Board of Trustees, the Museum of Natural History. Live only a few blocks from it for the past 30-plus years. I'm here to speak in support of the annexation. Apart from my role as a trustee, as I mentioned, I'm a neighbor. I've been walking those woods for over 30 years. And extremely important to me was the protection of the trails, and Luke Swetland knows of my interest in that because we had a conversation quite a while before I became a trustee, and that was sacrosanct. I believe that the whole support of the museum mission in the neighborhood hinges indeed on the protection of that access, and I don't doubt it. It was both logical and, in a larger sense, right that the museum sought annexation in the city for all its physical attributes and the extension of the rural land. Its very infrastructure sits within the city. It makes no sense to have the museum lands bifurcated. Permits, land use entitlements, licensing, utilities, sewer and water, they're basically provided by the city. The museum is, we heard again and again, a great asset of the greater South Coast community. It's enjoyed equally by city and county residents, schools, and other parties alike. The fact that it is being annexed to the city matters little or not at all to most people. I mean, matters to the neighbors and to the museum itself as a structural matter. As to the neighborhood of Lower Mission Canyon, the museum has a 100-year relationship with its neighbors. Its impacts on the neighborhood are about the same as I remember when I first moved into the area decades ago. The use of the facility is governed by its conditional use permit, and that specifies the number of users per year, hours of operation, and the nature of the museum's activities, both indoor and outdoor. The museum's Phase 1 master plan has been extensively reviewed by both neighbors and the City Planning Commission. The proposed Phase 1 improvements involve basically low-impact improvements, one of which you saw in the illustration of the walkway in front of the museum, the butterfly collection, and modernization of the museum's exhibits, which are all interior. In conclusion, the Museum of Natural History, as one of our greatest resources, is truly an indispensable institution. Its request to annex to the city is logical, responsible, and necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question of the speaker? Mr. Rellis? If you could come back to the microphone for a minute. Since you've been on the board of the museum, and I realize this is outside the purview of this commission to talk about conservation easements, but that seems to be the key issue that I'm hearing over and over again, is that some of the neighbors are very concerned about the long-term preservation of that property that seems to be so precious to everybody. So is that something that the board has discussed or would consider in the future?
It's not a matter I've specifically discussed. I consider myself as a trustee an advocate for protection, assured protection of that. I thought the conditional use permit pretty much settles the matter, unless there's some clarification that I'm missing.
Okay, well, I guess it has more to do with longevity, because generally, you know, once a conservation easement has occurred, then that is assumed to be in perpetuity, where, as some of the speakers have said, you know, conditions on a conditional use permit, you know, can be changed over time. So I just put it out there to you, since you were on the board and obviously very concerned about it. Might be something that the board might want to talk about in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Our next speaker is Nancy Bertelson, to be followed by Robert Mueller, who is our final speaker.
The courthouse is the diamond of the city, and the Museum of Natural History is the diamond of the county. This area is the most special historic monument because of our rural character entering Mission Canyon. To annex it to the city is senseless and would only encourage the development of sidewalks and curbs, which would destroy the most important aesthetic value of our county and the Mission Canyon area. This is a red flag. The city could sell this historic nonprofit area for the development of houses and widen Mission Canyon Road into a fast, dangerous, ugly highway. Handicapped people love nature. To say they can't travel through it is an insult to their intelligence and abilities. All of Mission Canyon County uses city water and septic now. I request that you deny the annexation of the Museum of Natural History property to the city. It used to be all in the county. Let's put it back to all the property being in the county. I would like to read to you what my daughter wrote about exiting Mission Canyon when she was 17 years old. Upon seeing something magical, beautiful for the first time, most of us will be in awe and savor the sacred thing. But often, when we are close to or around some such person or thing on a daily basis, we forget how wonderful it is. There are many things here in Santa Barbara like that. The ocean itself, which most of us totally take for granted, is a luxury that the people in many states are denied. But not everything in this town is easily taken for granted. Some are exceptional. There is one certain spot which, even though I've been driving by it for years, never ceases to amaze me. Every morning coming down Mission Canyon, I see a wonderful sight. Just after passing APS, there is a little tiny hump in the road, and as you get upon and over it, a breathtaking scene is in view. The Mission Gardens lay right in front of you, a green blanket of a lawn simmering Crayola crayon green in the early day. Dozens of specimens of roses pop up just behind this green blanket, followed by Spanish-style houses with red tile roofs and iron balconies. The whole city of Santa Barbara is before me, and beyond it is the ocean. One of the things I love about this painting is that it is different every day. When it is clear enough, you can see all the way across the water to the islands. Other times it is foggy. Sometimes the pellet man is driving his red tractor over the lawn. Other times there are children and dogs running on it. But this view, although it changes, has always stayed the same since as long as I can remember. Facing in the direction of the sea, observing the soul of our city with reverence.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like it to stay like that, beautiful and safe when she returns home. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Robert Mueller.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Mueller. I represent my wife and myself. We do not oppose the museum's proposal to annex the western parcels into City of Santa Barbara jurisdiction. However, we have grave concerns regarding the inadequacies of the planning process supporting this proposal. We own an undeveloped parcel that lies adjacent to the museum's western properties. The legal egress and ingress to this property is on Las Encinas Road as established by the Elizabeth McCullough subdivision map of 1920. Las Encinas Road runs between the two parcels that the museum is requesting to have annexed into City of Santa Barbara. Those are the parcels that have been discussed in Mr. Hood's presentation and by Ms. Elledge as well. The museum has acknowledged our legal right to ingress and egress on Las Encinas Road. During the past 3 years, we have asked repeatedly that the planning process address the simple question: what impacts will annexation have on adjacent neighbors? We wrote to the city planner, Mr. Daniel Gullett, without response. We asked the question at public forums held by the museum and received no answer. We have addressed the Santa Barbara City Council, and the question did not receive attention. Now, after repeated questioning, Mr. Gullett has informed us that annexation by the City of Santa Barbara will place the property on which our legal ingress and egress easement lies under the constraints of El Pueblo Viejo. We have learned that these include oversight by the Historic Landmarks Commission and the Design Review Board, as well as the necessity of meeting additional requirements by the city's stormwater management program. What other regulatory constraints annexation may create, we do not know. This has serious implications for other adjacent landowners as well as ourselves. It is clear that throughout the 10-year planning process leading to the museum's application for annexation, no one has bothered to consider how annexation from County of Santa Barbara jurisdiction to the City of Santa Barbara will impact adjacent landowners. At this juncture, Given the failings of the planning process, and in order to avoid placing undue financial and regulatory hardships on adjacent landowners, this commission has no choice but to defer annexation until these impacts have been fully evaluated and fully mitigated. Thank you.
That's the final speaker. Okay, I'll close public comment, and then we've got 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'll try to do it within that time. I have a couple of answers to questions that came up that aren't really rebuttals, so let me just try to get through it all quickly. You asked about the number of public meetings. As part of the museum's application to the city, we submitted an attachment to our project description that listed all of the neighborhood outreach that we had done over the course of the years leading up to our application filing. And at the time, I think that it was 32 meetings that we had held. It was a combination of large community outreach meetings, neighborhood meetings, and we actually formed a special group of closest neighbors, we called it, and we met with them regularly and more frequently because of the special concerns that people living next to a museum would have and with the project that we were proposing. So you add that to the public hearings that take place with HLC and Planning Commission and Council, and it's around 40 meetings over the course of 7 or 8 years. Annexation was part of the proposal from the beginning. That was always, even though the project changed over time, the annexation component never did. The Mission Canyon corridor has nothing to do with this annexation. The City of Santa Barbara, in its conditional use permit, did not require any intersection improvements. What they required was frontage improvements along the Puesta del Sol frontage in front of the museum, and I showed you an image of the pathway that was approved by HLC and that they will be implementing. I want to put a slide up, and I do this. Could we put my presentation back up, please, Mr. Allen? And as I'm bringing this up, I just want to state for the record that as a planner in this community for 30 years, I really value and applaud citizen participation. I believe that citizen participation in a public review process improves projects. In this particular case, I'm concerned. And so what I want to do is just put up, you're not going to be able to read it really, but let me just put it up for your understanding. This is a copy of the petition, and when you got the signatures from everybody that submitted their signatures, you saw the part that's in bold at the top. We do not support the annexation. But I don't believe what was submitted to you was the additional commentary that went out asking for people to sign the petition. And I want to bring it to your attention because this kind of thing, I don't think is a productive way for citizens to participate in the process. It talks about piecemeal annexation, it talks about a land grab, it talks about the loss of oaks and sycamores, it talks about helping to preserve Mission Canyon corridor. None of those things are happening with this annexation. And when the group of people who were, when Ms. Kahn and Ms. Crawford were here before you in November, making a presentation during public comment, I met them out in the hall and I asked for the opportunity to sit down and speak with them because they did have what I could tell were sincere concerns. They refused to meet with me, and this kind of information is what continues to go out to people in Mission Canyon who have been asked to sign the petition. And so let's all participate. Let's all make sure that the projects in our community are good, but let's be responsible. Let's do our homework. Let's be well informed, and let's provide people accurate information.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I could ask a question.
Yes.
Ms. Eldridge? The reason why I asked the question as to how many meetings, public meetings, had been held in the creation of this project, because I was quite impressed with the 18 pages of the CUP that the city developed. And it addresses a lot of issues, especially protecting sensitive habitat. So some of the speakers have said that If we move to county jurisdiction, we're not going to say, I'm sorry, if we move from the county to the city, we're not going to have the same protections the county afforded. Is that true?
Well, not in my opinion. Just the basic information is that both jurisdictions have equally robust biological resource protection policies, which is what is important on these particular parcels, as I explained. So that's just, I think they're equal with respect to protection. But the thing that's important that I think has been pointed out several times today is that the city has approved now an updated CUP for the museum that upon annexation will affect these woodlands. And I went through all of the conditions of approval that relate to the woodlands, that define the activities that are allowed and restrict them. And it's the activities that take place there now: passive recreation, education, and one single-family residence. To change that, you would have to go back through a complete public review process. And there has been a commitment by the museum, the foreseeable future, everything they know right now, there is no intent to do anything with those woodlands other than continue to make them available for the public. So the CUP that comes into effect adds additional protections. If the annexation doesn't happen, the CUP doesn't have effect on the woodland. And so it sits there without those additional protections.
Okay, now the CUP was created on March 24th of 2015, and the city council approved it in April of 2015, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yes, the hearing took place on March 24th, and then there was a resolution adopted. There were a couple of changes to the conditions of approval, so it came back to council about a month later on consent, and that's when the resolution was signed.
Now, the Santa Barbara City Council can't change the CUP without going through a process.
Nobody can. The landowner can't.
So, I mean, the CUP would require an entire, if there was going to be a change in the CUP, it would require another total public process to vet out whatever it is and see if there's any CEQA changes and whatnot. So it's not. That's correct. It's not a simple change. It takes time and work. And then just so that I have it clear, what is before us really isn't, as was said, land use. What is before us is whether we feel that the property or the entity would be properly best ruled under one jurisdiction instead of two jurisdictions. So the question before us is whether we want to put it in one or keep it as two.
I would love to answer that question, but you might want your own staff and council to answer that.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Starr?
I have a couple pretty narrow technical questions, if you don't mind. Is my impression correct that the conditional use permit from the city incorporates all of the environmentally sensitive habitat policies of the Mission County community plan, or are there some that are not imported?
What was imported was what was requested of us to import by the Mission Canyon Association, and they're all the ones that would be applicable to the woodland.
They're basically.
Yes.
And were you able to discern whether there is any difference in oak protection as a result of the counties being subject to this 2-year-old law or something like this, SB 1344? Is the protection the same in the city, or functionally the same in the city, even though the city's not subject to it?
It's my understanding that oak protection is equal under the different policies. The difference that I noted is, and that I think our biologist noted, is that there is a 50-foot setback requirement with the Mission Canyon community plan policies that does not exist in the city.
And to tie a bow on this, is my impression not correct, that if you wanted to change the Mission Canyon community plan, you have to go back through the process, you have to reconstitute the plan advisory committee, you got to get their advice, and you got to go through the board of supervisors. The process in the city is essentially the same. Is there not a general plan amendment that was approved So if you wanted to change the CUP, would you not have to also change the general plan?
No, you do not.
Just the CUP?
Right.
Still a discretionary permit?
It still is.
Okay, and there's one more. Oh, do you know what the ability of a property owner to develop by right affordable housing on any of those residential parcels is?
I don't. We might want to ask.
That's probably directed to the city, whether the city could develop any of those parcels for affordable housing by right.
If they owned it.
If they
don't
owned
own
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The museum owns the property.
Yes, I understand they do
okay.
now. I just want.
Yeah. I'm sorry. While I'm up here, I did want to respond to Mr. Mueller. He had an understanding from speaking with Dan Gullett at the city that the EPV, the El Pueblo Viejo, the historic district, did extend over these parcels, which meant that it would extend over the easement that he is concerned about. And you can ask Ms. Brooke, but my understanding and talking with her earlier today is that that is not the case. The EPV is a specific legal description within the city zoning ordinance, and there's a map that goes along with it. And if these properties were to go into the EPV, there would need to be an ordinance amendment similar to what you were just asking about, a general plan amendment to incorporate those parcels. That has not been part of our process. It hasn't been discussed, and it would not affect this easement right now.
So where would annexation leave the Mullers and the other private property owners as far as having their interests protected?
Yeah, I think that it's a question that has been asked, and perhaps staff can address it. He wants to know, if you're adjacent to a property that's been annexed, what does it mean? And I think he's been seeking a jurisdictional answer to that question for quite some time. You know, the whole area is, as was pointed out, is within the city's sphere of influence. And so does it change something for him to now be next to the city boundary rather than a couple of parcels away from it? I think that's his question. And
I don't know that we can answer that.
Okay, is there any other commissioner questions? I have one. And I'm not sure if you're the person to answer it or not, but we'll start with you.
Right.
The 3 parcels that the museum owns, were they all acquired at the same time?
those 3, I believe, were, and it was in the early 70s. Different, the museum owns quite a number of parcels in that area, but the 3 that are the subject today, yes, were acquired at the same time.
So at the time they purchased it, 1 was in the city and 2 was in the county? All were in this, all were in the county?
All three were in the county, still are. Of the 3 that are the subject today.
Okay.
Should we bring up a map?
No.
Okay.
Because where I'm going with it was, it seems to be something of 2 jurisdictions. And it appears that the 2 jurisdictions was brought on by the museum itself.
Well, that's true if the museum has been there at that very location for 100 years. The land that we're talking about wasn't acquired. I think it was donated to them, actually, in the early 70s. So they didn't purchase it, but it was donated to them. And at that point, there had already been the conditional use permit came later. Sorry, the annexation took place in 1968. This land was dedicated in the early 70s. And in the 1980s, the first CUP was issued by the city for the area that was in their jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, with that, we'll bring it back to the commission for a motion.
Be glad to make a motion, unless there's further deliberation from the commission.
I just have a couple comments.
You want to go ahead with your question before I go with the motion?
Yeah, I would like to make a couple comments. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here. This has been an interesting discussion. It's been, we've been hearing from the folks, Ms. Kahn and your group. You've been coming to our LAFCO hearings, as has been stated, and keeping, I think, this commission abreast of what has been presented to us today. So I just want to say to you and to your coalition a thank you, because this issue is not simply one. Someone said this would be a no-brainer, and in some ways I would agree with that. It would seem to be that way, but this is a very special piece of property. And so I know for myself, and I'm sure I speak for the commission, that we have spent a lot of time in looking over the material, speaking to folks in the community. I've talked to the applicants about this to better understand and really to take a hard look at the conditions of approval from the city. And I'm feeling, I want to say I'm feeling confident that moving forward with this annexation is the right thing to do. It makes sense. Maybe it is a no-brainer, but it did take me a while to get to that point. But I'm feeling that this is the appropriate action to take. It makes sense, not just for the museum. Obviously, I think this is something that is going to be beneficial to the museum and to the community. But I think from a LAFCO perspective, it also makes sense. So I don't know what your motion will be, but if it is to approve the annexation, I will agree with that. And again, I just want to thank everyone for being here. And I would not be moving forward and approving this if I didn't have that confidence in what the museum has stated to us publicly, what the CUP says in the document, and all of the work that has gone into. I thank Barbara for talking about that, the work that the community has done to make sure that this is a pretty darn good document. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Ulrich, did you have something?
Yeah, I guess maybe some comments in general, because life does evolve and change, and I suspect that, you know, politicians change and boards change and things like that. The museum's been around for 100 years, and it frankly has been studying this, and I know the area's been studied forever also, and preserving it is really important. And I don't foresee that, at least in my lifetime, that there's going to be a conspiracy to build affordable housing anywhere in that area, because part of the protections in the PUC, the east side, the west side, the north side, and I'm just saying that kind of comically, but everyone's had their input. They're all thrown into this document, the CUP, that will control this. And one comment was made about regulatory agencies at the city. Well, the county is under the same storm drain runoff and all the other stuff. Everybody in the world has to play by those rules. So it's not that the city's going to, or the county's not going to have to participate, as we all are, in those nuances that the government, the state, the feds are putting on us, and waterways and everything else. And so that being said, I'm comfortable in reading this and reading the letters, and believe me, I think everyone's scared to death of anyone touching an oak tree or maybe a strange bird landing there, but nature does go on, and it seems that you all have been there, live it now, and it just seems to be the right thing to do to make one jurisdiction responsible, and that jurisdiction, as I've heard, is phenomenal, meaning Santa Barbara, the city of Santa Barbara, because they're serving that area now. And there was one other, it went by the wayside since I'm an old guy, but anyway, thank you.
Commissioner Farrar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I want to thank all of the speakers, and I want to particularly thank Ms. Crawford and Ms. Kahn. As Commissioner Wolf said, you have been coming to LAFCO meetings and keeping us apprised of this issue for a long time. And I think that we all appreciate the great passion and care and concern that you bring to this issue. as we all do when we have very special places in our life that mean a lot to us that we don't want to change. As I said before, and as others have said, so much of the discussion today has not really been a LAFCO issue. It's been a land use issue, concerns about change in use, in density, and loss of public access to this very special oak woodland area. But, as a LAFCO commissioner, for something like this, what I'm looking at is, is it within the existing sphere of influence of the city? Yes. Is it being served by city services already? Yes. Is it an orderly boundary? Is it not creating an island or a peninsula? Yes. So those were the main things that I was looking at wearing my LAFCO commissioner hat. As Commissioner Orrick said, time does move on, things change, and yes, the board of the museum can change, and the city council can change, and things can change in the future for this parcel. However, things can change at the county. We can have a change in county staff. We can have a change on the board. So I would say that, the risk of change for this property is probably equal whether it stays in the county or the city. I do take a lot of comfort from the fact that the Mission Canyon Association is supporting it. I know from past experience that they are extremely thorough and careful in their review, and their approval is not granted lightly. And I think the fact that they asked for and got the inclusion of those conditions in the Mission Canyon plan that they thought were most protective of this property included in the CUP conditions, I think is probably stronger protection as we can get at this particular time. So I am prepared to move forward and support the city's application. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Stark?
Yes, I just have a couple of brief comments. I think what's come down to, it's been amply demonstrated that as a practical matter, the right thing to do is to approve the annexation based on, I think, the simple proposition that if you're a property owner and you're subject to a jurisdiction, you want to be subject to one jurisdiction, not two jurisdictions, so you know what the rules are and you know who to go to. That being said, there are some things about the way that the city handled this CEQA exemption that I think concern me a little bit. I'm not sure it's not that the reason for it isn't what CEQA has become as more of a way to block projects than to really get legitimate information. But I really think we would have been better served and maybe avoided some of the controversy here had the maps been a little more clear, had the baseline for the events and the traffic been spelled out and determined, and had there been an analysis of exactly how well protected those oak woodlands and riparian woodlands are. That being said, I think the exemption is perfectly adequate for our purposes. I see no reason not to exempt it and to approve this annexation. But I'd suggest to the city that they may want to cultivate a relationship with their neighbors and pay particular attention to how well they're monitoring and keeping the use and the public use and the cleanup of that property.
Any other comments? I have a couple myself, and actually Commissioner Farr and Commissioner Stark pretty much touched on it. I really feel that the museum, I hope, would go forward and pay closer attention to those concerned citizens around them. Because somebody may have said, no, they didn't want to talk to you. I think you should do the extra effort and talk to them. Looking at the project strictly from a LAFCO perspective, I feel the same way, that one jurisdiction makes sense. And so I'm going to support the annexation myself, too. And with that, I entertain a motion.
Okay. Understanding that what our role is, the question is whether it be two or one. And obviously it's better to have it all under one jurisdiction. The process has gone through the city of Santa Barbara, planning and city council. It's gone before the Board of Supervisors. all the work has been done that we require as a commission. So with the work being done, I would move that we pass the resolution of the Santa Barbara Local Agency Formation Commission making determinations and approving the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History's reorganization, annexation of the city of Santa Barbara, and detachment from the Mission County Lighting District, the Santa Barbara County Fire Protection District, and County Service Area 12, and County Service Area 32.
Is there a second?
Well, I can read the rest, but
Mr. Chair, the resolution includes everything, and that was Mr. Seva's basic motion. Thank you.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Seves?
Aye.
Commissioner Fart? Commissioner Morehouse?
Aye.
Commissioner Orek?
Aye.
Commissioner Stark? Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Guyer?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, with that, let's take a 5-minute break. Okay, would like to call the meeting back to order. We do have a quorum. Okay, if we read in business item 1.
Chair Guyer, members of the commission, business item number 1 is to consider a report on the 2016 Cal LAFCO Annual Conference in Santa Barbara. Recommend that the commission provide direction to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is more of an update than anything else. We have a flyer that we'll put up on the screen that we received a couple of days ago. I sent you an email with an attachment about the Cal LAFCO annual conference that we are hosting October 26th through the 28th. And I think that the flyer came out really well. And we are, as you can see, hosting a mobile workshop and some events on Wednesday evening. And so we're moving ahead with this, and really pleased the way it came out. We have a new logo, second down from the Orchards to Oceans logo for the conference. And this is a new Santa Barbara LAFCO logo that we'll put on our letterhead. And we kind of revised this. They wanted one for the conference save the date material, and so I worked with a graphic artist on Cal LAFCO to develop this. We also got received the registration materials that Jacqueline has, and we'll be sending out registration to you all fairly soon. There's some deadlines that I wanted to apprise you of. Early bird registration is September 16th. And so all registrations that get a discount should be filed by then. Jacqueline will take care of that. And if you want to attend, we budgeted for our host committee, host LAFCO, to attend the conference, and we'll pay registration. And then there's also some cutoff dates for hotel registration, and that's September 25th. The program is coming along nicely. Commissioner Morehouse and myself are working on a couple of sessions that I think are working out pretty well. And we talked to Pamela Miller yesterday. We're getting a little bit behind on the program. I know the CSDA annual conference program is pretty well set, and they meet 2 weeks before Cal LAFCO meets in Santa Barbara. So we're trying to put some pressure on the program planning committee to kind of firm up their sessions. I'm working on a session that deals with state overrides as a general session on Friday morning, and one of the issues is SGMA. It's the AB3, SB 239, SB 88, that we're seeing some legislation that is bypassing LAFCO. This seems to be a more frequent occurrence in the past year or so, a year or two. Jeff's working on, Commissioner Morehouse is working on a session with water that is a constant issue, and we're helping him with some City of San Luis Obispo folks, and I think CASA has some people that Jeff's trying to get for a session that would be, I think it's on Thursday afternoon. So anyway, with that, getting pretty excited. The conference is coming up fairly soon. It's July, and so we're looking August, September, October. So we're wanting to firm up the program and firm up the mobile workshop, which it looks like will be going south to the Everbloom greenhouse. That's pretty impressive, and headed up to Bradbury Dam and the lookout, and we can actually have access to the dam, and then have a lunch in the county park on the way back, and have a historian that will be on the bus, and also somebody that is familiar with the water situation in Santa Barbara County. That should make it a pretty eventful mobile workshop. So we're happy with that. And Jeff, did you have any comments? Seems to be working fine. So we're just if you're wanting to register, I don't know if all of you want to go, or if some of you are going to be out of town, but let Jacqueline know, and we'll sign you up for the registration. We've have some hotel money, too, for people who want to spend the night or two in the hotel, don't want to drive to North County, don't want to drive anywhere, but want to experience the camaraderie and the meeting their peers from cities, counties, special districts, and public representatives on LAFCO. That's all I had, unless you have any questions.
Commissioner Farr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I was on the last couple of calls as part of the host committee with Commissioner Morehouse, and Commissioner Welt was on one of them, and Paul and Ms. Miller as well. And one of the things I thought was very exciting was Pamela Miller said that they have an enormous amount of interest already in people from throughout the state to come. In fact, she kept hearing, you know, when are you going to get the registration information out? We really want to sign up. So I think we're going to have a full house and then some. And I know that I'm looking forward to being there and staying in the hotel. So I think any of us that, you know, want to be a part of this probably need to get going on it now, because I think the rooms are going to sell out pretty fast.
Commissioner Stark?
Yeah. I have a quasi-self-interested question. Is there a LAFCO council spot on the agenda with actual continuing legal education credits?
Yes, there's always I think it's a 1-hour session. It's usually not on the agenda, but it's available for CLE. There's some debate about, quite frankly, whether commissioners should show up at that. There's a little sensitivity there, but we should talk about that.
That would be an amusing...
I have no problem with it, by the way.
That would be an amusing subject, yes.
I believe Commissioner Wolf attended one that I missed in Yosemite one year. I don't know if you had any pushback on that particular attendance.
No, no one said anything, but that was a while ago. It was actually one of the most interesting sessions. They're really good.
I suppose worst case,
they shouldn't keep us out.
I could disguise myself as a LAFCO counsel.
Not you, but well,
Mr.
Paul,
Chair,
I do think if that comes up during your discussions, or Jeff, that commissioners should be allowed to go to that.
I don't see there's a problem with it.
Yeah.
To be honest, but we'll see. Sorry to disagree, Bill.
I'm not giving a personal opinion. I'm noting how it is addressed. And
yeah, well, you tell those lawyers that we want to go.
Commissioner Lovenito?
thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious if the alternates have to stay in an alternate hotel, or are we allowed to stay in the same hotel?
Yes.
I'll offer my fellow alternates the alternate man cave, if it's just up the hill.
There's a youth hostel right down the street.
Okay. Business item 2.
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, business item 2 is to consider nominations for Cal LAFCO Achievement Awards, and is to recommend nominations and provide direction to staff.
Mr. Chairman, we just received the nomination forms, I think the day the agenda packet went out, so we have some time if you're wanting to nominate in any of the categories that are listed in Exhibit B, most effective commission, so on and so forth. So we don't need to get it today, but if you wanted to be thinking about it, nominations are due by August 31st, so we should have, if we're going to do it, we should have something in mind by the August 5th meeting, and we can submit those to Cal LAFCO. I just bring it up as it's more of an information item, but I put it on as a business item in case there's anything that you wanted to do right now. That's all I had.
Okay, and business item 3.
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, business item number 3 is to consider Cal LAFCO call for nominations for the 2016-2017 Cal LAFCO Board of Directors, and it is to recommend nominations and provide direction to staff.
Mr. Chairman, again, there's a couple of open seats in the coastal region, county and special district members on the Cal LAFCO Board of Directors, and the nomination forms are available. Thursday, October 27th is the meeting that the Fest Parker that will make the business meeting that will make the appointments, and nominations can be accepted until September 26th. And there's two, again, county and district members in the coastal region. 2 seats are available. I'm not sure if there's incumbents that would be running, but I can let you know when I find out.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to information item number 1.
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, informational item number 1 is to receive and file the Cal LAFCO Legislative Committee meeting update.
And again, Mr. Chairman, this is just an update. It's mainly a watch and report back on some legislation that Cal LAFCO has been concerned with. There's a couple of bills that were actually dropped because Cal LAFCO had some strong concerns with those dealing with disadvantaged unincorporated communities, SB 1218. But I just give this to you for your information. I don't really have any comments. The omnibus bill and the JPA bill are Cal LAFCO sponsored legislation that look like they're going through without any issues.
Right. Any questions? If not, we'll move on to information item number 1.
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, informational item number 2 is to receive and file a report on the current Santa Barbara LAFCO applications.
And again, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, these are the current applications. As you can see, the San Ynez Sphere of Influence, CSD Sphere of Influence, the Old Town Annexation, Goleta Sanitary District, the formation of the Cuyama Basin Water District, and the Curletti Annexation to the Laguna County Sanitation District. The last 3 would be on your August 5th agenda, the way things are looking right now. We had a meeting with the attorney for the Cuyama Basin Water District, and we're getting ready to process that application. Everything looks like it's complete. And those 3 annexations, including the one in North County for the farm worker housing project to the Laguna County Sanitation District, we're kind of on the fast track with that. Wanted to get it approved by your commission and recommend approval on it. They're facing some issues with grading and water if it rains again. They wanted to kind of do that in the early fall. So if you have any questions on any of these, I'd be happy to respond.
Okay, now.
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, we have 6 requests to speak on this.
Okay.
Our first request is from Neil Klein, to be followed by Winston Craven. Is Neil here? Okay, we'll go to Winston Craven, to be followed by Hillary Hauser.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Winston Craven. I'm an over 20-year resident of Los Olivos. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I support Los Olivos' or San Ynez's Community Service District sphere of influence increase to include Los Olivos. First, I'd like to point out that San Ynez CSD did not initiate this sphere of influence increase without citizen input. Myself and 2 other people went into the community of Los Olivos and collected about 118 signatures to make this happen. Then at a later date, when San Ynez CSD had filed its application, I gathered approximately another 100+ signatures. Some of these were the same individuals, but not all of them were the same people. These signatures were given to you in the the Heal the Oceans info packet a couple of months ago. When gathering these signatures, the residents were ready and willing. This was not a hard sell. My contact with the residents indicates to me that they do not see the need for, nor do they want a Los Olivos CSD. They know that because of the LAMP, they need a wastewater treatment facility, and they would prefer San Ynez CSD meet this need. They fear that if the steering committee gets their Los Olivos CSD, and make no mistake, this is what this is about, they will try to use it to their financial advantage to make the committee pay for improvements to the business district. The steering committee was offered a wastewater plant by the San Ynez CSD, and when and if they got their CSD, they would get the keys. They refused. I believe because they are using this as a lever to get a Los Olivos CSD. Even if Los Olivos CSD is created with only the wastewater as its purpose, The residents have no wish to continue to fight to keep this CSD under control in the future. I would guess that as many as 200 Los Olivos residents, counting the letters and emails that have been sent to LAFCO, have expressed the wish to have the Santa Ynez CSD meet our wastewater needs, and still no one listens. Please listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Hillary Hauser, to be followed by Bonita Sargent.
Good afternoon, Chair Guyer, members of the Commission, and Mr. Hood. Hillary Hauser from Hill the Ocean. I want to speak to the issue of the June 2 decision of LAFCO without the benefit of over 30 Los Olivos residents who want to be annexed into the Santa Ynez CSD for sewer service. First, I appreciate the work being done by Michael Allen and Jacqueline Alexander, clerk of the board, and even Mr. Hood. Admittedly, there were many signatures from Los Olivos citizens coming in very close to the hearing, even on the day of the hearing. And I believe, yes, there would be confusion, understandable, but there is no deadline, no law against it, and 30-plus signatures arrived before others that made it to the commission for your consideration. The result is the same. LAFCO made a 3-4 decision without these 30-plus citizens being heard or represented. Los Olivos has no city council, no public forum where citizens can be heard. LAFCO is it. There have been town hall meeting after meeting, which Hill the Ocean attended to explain Proposition 1 funding available for the building of a pocket wastewater recycling plant for Los Olivos. At these meetings, we were approached by Los Olivos citizens who asked for help. They felt outshouted by a minority group of citizens who took over the running of the town hall meeting, prepared expensive PowerPoints, how Los Olivos could create its own CSD. At the end, 140 citizens signed a petition asking to be annexed into this SYCSD for sewer service. They don't want a CSD. They want sewer service. So, on this note, by the way, they're nervous about the lamp. Hill the Ocean received yesterday an email from the regional board saying groundwater quality data is being collected now. There will be an evaluation. If the regional board steps in and forces everybody to act, that's going to be not good. The point today, 140 people are not being listened to, and now on June 2, 30-plus people weren't heard by LAFCO. Your commission is the only voice they have. I would really like to ask, since you established an August 5 meeting, that you would consider rehearing this issue with everybody represented. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bonita Sargent, to be followed by Kelly Gray.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, my name is Bonita Sargent. Thank you for this opportunity to express my opinion. I'm a resident in the Special Problems area of Los Olivos. Please vacate the June 2nd decision to postpone allowing the Santa Ynez CSD to expand their sphere of influence to include Los Olivos, and please schedule a rehearing. I understand that approximately 39 letters from residents requesting the sphere of influence expansion did not make it into the commissioners' packets for the June 2nd meeting. I am in favor of the Santa Ynez CSD moving forward with their sphere of influence expansion and allowing their evaluation of wastewater solutions for Los Olivos so that we, the people, the residents of Los Olivos, will have options to compare. Otherwise, we will only have one source of information. When the steering committee finishes their evaluation, we will only have that source of information with no alternatives to consider. The Santa Ynez CSD has over 30 years of experience managing wastewater issues. It will only benefit the residents of Los Olivos to have the opportunity to hear the Santa Ynez CSD's assessment of costs and options. Allowing the expansion of their sphere of influence is the first step. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kelly Gray, to be followed by Mark Herthel.
Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to be heard. My name is Kelly Gray, and I've been a resident of Los Olivos since 1996. And I respectfully request that you vacate your ruling of June 2nd, set everything for a new hearing. The effect of the ruling causes by itself a 6-month delay in even starting to resolve the immediate dire sewage issue in Los Olivos. That's just to allow the business district, primarily the business district, to see if they can get enough voters to vote for a Los Olivos CSD. So there's no certainty at all, and this puts everything off until January. Santa Ynez Community Service District, ID1, has the resources and the experience to identify the best means to resolve our sewage problem. Equally important is the fact that they can start work now. In addition, the Los Olivos Community Service District, Santa Ynez Community Service District, ID1, can resolve this issue at a lower cost to each of us homeowners. Thank you for letting me be heard.
Our next speaker is Mark Herthel, to be followed by Neil Klein, who is our final speaker.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for having us again today. My name is Mark Herthel. Saw you here last month, part of this 10-member volunteer steering committee. We're all residents in Los Olivos. We've met over 35 times since August, and I think we have the same goal with the other speakers, that we want the best for Los Olivos. We did start in the business community because that's where the county was telling us to focus. LAMP changed all that, and we focused to the whole town, and have had up to almost 5 community meetings. I'll be our 5th here this September. We thank you for your vote last month. As we do have these studies underway, we have the county doing a focused feasibility study, which we asked for it to be entity agnostic, so the Santa Ynez CSD could use that as well. We heard yesterday it's still going to be completed this month. We've also got this financial feasibility study underway, which will be done in September. Talked to the consultant yesterday, and he is looking at formation of a single function Los Olivos CSD, annexation to Santa Ynez CSD. He's already been in contact with Mr. Hodge and has the financials for Santa Ynez CSD, and should be working with them, looking at a county CSA, and potentially something arrangement with ID1, because they can sell recycled water. This plant will be able to generate recycled water. We believe it's essential that our community has this information, and we have a strong foundation to move forward with whichever solution our community chooses. It may be annexation of Santa Ynez CSD, it may be a CSA, or it may be a Los Olivos CSD. So we'd ask that you grant the delay that you had until these studies are done, and we think we're on a good path. And we appreciate the help of EHS for moving forward on that study. Our goal is that our community can come in and can see the studies and can decide the path it wants to go. And would ask the help of the county to help facilitate that September meeting, someone that can help lead that process. So we request you allow this process to continue, and ultimately we believe we have the same goal of Heal the Ocean. One of our community members and committee members who's had a working relationship in the past with Hillary has recently reached out to her. We want a meeting because we think we're all going for the same goal. We're just trying to have a little bit more information up front before we make that leap. We also think that the Santa Ynez CSD has a lot going on in Santa Ynez itself with the annexation of West Santa Ynez. I was at the meeting a couple weeks ago where we were also on the agenda. And a lot of the questions that folks in that area were asking are the ones that will be answered for our town in those 2 studies. So we think ultimately it'll be a cleaner process, and we'll get to a successful outcome sooner with taking this approach. We'd be happy to update LAFCO on the studies over the summer if you'd like. We thank you.
And our final speaker is Neil Klein.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for my chance. Well, I would just echo everything Mark just said. It's like he copied my speech or I copied his, I'm not sure. But I would certainly want to say we're gratified that you give us an opportunity to extend the time before we get to analyze the two studies that have been proposed both financially and technically. That'll make our decision a lot clearer. We hope to get that results in September and to discuss with our community, the whole community, so I have a complete and as clear as possible understanding of the technical aspects, the financial aspects, and the governance aspects of the future that the LAMP has imposed on our community. It's a huge obligation, a very heavy, high financial obligation, but the outcome of this study is going to control the growth and the future of our community, and so I think another couple of months certainly is worth waiting for. If the septic leachate were posing an immediate threat to our groundwater supplies, we wouldn't be so cavalier about asking for an extension. But the problem is it's a long-range challenge to protect the groundwater. There's no evidence currently that the septic waste is getting into our groundwater supplies, thankfully for that. And we don't think it's going to change much in the next 2 or 3 months. The closest wells to our leachate fields are maybe, it's protected by about 450 feet of impermeable clays and silts, so that the leachates in the perched water, the groundwater's got this protection. It's not going to change in 2 or 3 months. So I'm gratified that I'll say it once again, gratified that you've given us the opportunity to extend our research, because we want to have our whole community behind what we plan to do. And thank you, appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from the commissioners? If not, we'll close the information item and move on to commissioner and staff announcements. Item 1. Maybe I could lead off with this.
Yeah, it was staff announcement. I don't know if there's a commissioner.
Go ahead.
I was going to tell you that we did hold the protest hearing last Friday in San Ynez at the Community Services District headquarters on the West San Ynez annexation, just to update you on that. We had received over 200 protest forms before we conducted the protest hearing. And so we received quite a few more at the protest hearing. Jacqueline and Mike were there. There's a large amount of confusion, to say the least, about, first of all, what it's going to cost to extend the sewer lines, if there's a mandatory connection required, and the reason that the San Ynez CSD adopted the resolution of application to LAFCO. And anyway, enough said on that. We'll make a determination on the sufficiency of the protests, and less than 25% of the registered voters or landowners owning 25% of the land value, it would be approved without an election. 25 to 50% of those same voters or landowners would send it to an election, and over 50% would terminate the annexation. And as I mentioned, we don't have a final tally yet. We have 30 days to do that, and we've contacted the clerk to check the sufficiency of the registered voters, and the county assessor to make a determination on the assessed value. So with over 200 protests, it's hard to tell, if these are valid or not. There was some confusion about why people receive more than one protest form, but every registered voter needs to get one protest form. So, they said, well, we received 6 protest forms. Well, that's because you're a landowner and you also have, either renters or family members that constitute 6 registered voters. So they said, well, we could just do it with one, but no, every registered voter has a say in the protest. Second item, I've been contacted recently about forming a county library district. And so I have a meeting set up sometime in the next couple of weeks with people that are really interested in forming a library district. The county of San Luis Obispo has a city-county library district, so I'll meet with them and report back to you on how that goes. Those are the only couple of things I had.
Okay, I did receive a request for a future agenda item to reconsider this San Ynez vote that we had last month. It's not quite simple, so I'm going to let Mr. Dillon explain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Reconsideration, there's a couple of different aspects of reconsideration, and one thing I want to say what this is not. There is a reconsideration process under the statute, but that applies to when you make a final decision on an annexation or a detachment or incorporation or disincorporation. In other words, final decisions on reorganizations. There's a process under the code where any affected party can request reconsideration within 35 days. That's not asked for by LAFCO. That's actually an affected party. And again, that's not regarding spheres of influence, which are treated separately. That's a very statutory built process where after a final decision through a resolution being adopted, there's a process for that to occur. We don't have that before us here today. What you have here is the June 2nd action was taken, and apparently, well, not apparently, I think it's been established that one email was overlooked that had 39 letters attached to it. And so just generally, I would offer a comment on email submittals. This is becoming more and more common, not just here, but at the Planning Commission of the County of Santa Barbara, for example. And the practice is that more and more often people are submitting comments via email, and often doing so right up until, just before the hearing. And as Ms. Hauser noted, yeah, there are no rules on this, so it's done, and it's certainly not illegal or in bad faith. I don't mean to suggest anything like that. But generally, the law in this area is communicating by email in legal matters is not considered to be adequate for meeting any obligation you have under the law. So if you submit some sort of notice or other legal communication, that can be accepted by the recipient and relied on. So routinely, you have your clerk's office, both here and at the Planning Commission and elsewhere. If we get an email comment, typically the staff will print it out and put it in the packet for the board or the commission to consider. And that's the practice, and that's fine. And I'm not suggesting that change. But the commentary in this area suggests that email is generally considered unacceptable because there's too much room for inadvertent error, for email to be deleted or overlooked, for a server to crash, for it to not be properly sent or addressed. And so therefore, the general rule is it's not acceptable if it's challenged in terms of any sort of legal notice. But where it's accepted, where your clerk accepts it, prints it out, stamps it in, and gets it to the commission on time, that's fine. So there's nothing wrong with that process. But what you had here was an inadvertent overlook of an email. And so to that extent, I think, although there's not a lot of law in this area, I think the burden or the risk is really on the sender of the email to make sure it gets in on time. And if it inadvertently doesn't get printed out and submitted, that's just the way email is handled these days, and I think the risk is on the sender. It's important to note on this particular proceeding, it was not a hearing on a formal application for a sphere of influence. Rather, this was, as the staff report stated, it was to provide direction to staff on processing an application. And in addition to that, as Mr. Hood stated at the hearing, I got it in my notes, the matter was not noticed for approval as required by the Government Code Section 56-427, which is the 21-day notice requirement. So again, this is a proceeding where you didn't have formal parties who were aggrieved by the action. It's rather the internal processing of an application, and Mr. Hood wanted direction on that. The results might be different if we were looking at a formal hearing with a final action being taken. So having said all that, you could still reconsider the action because you have a lot of discretion to do what you want as a commission. But I need to, and I handed out the latest copy of Rosenberg's Rules of Order, which you adopted a few years ago, and it's got very specific language on reconsideration. And I would note, in some respects, this is a fairly detailed rule on reconsideration. It's on page 6 of your rules. And the gist of these requirements are, first of all, reconsideration may be made at the hearing itself when the matter was heard. So once the action was taken, as the hearing progresses, someone in the meeting could say later, well, I'd like to reconsider our action earlier and re-vote on the matter. So it has to be at the hearing, which was, in this case, heard on June 2nd. Secondly, the motion must be made by a person in the majority. It cannot be made by one of the people who are in the minority. I think the I assume the thought process there is to not let someone who got it voted to keep raising an issue that's already been finally decided after, in this case, a vigorous and, spirited debate. Well, there was a vote and you made a decision, so I think the rule is written with some sort of finality and order. The rule goes on to say, your rule goes on to say that if it's raised at a later hearing, then it's considered untimely. And then that doesn't preclude you from taking action. It's just that if it's untimely, you need to make a motion to suspend your rules, and that needs to be by a 2/3 vote. So if you wanted to bring this back on a time schedule different than what you directed to Mr. Hood last month, that would be a 5-vote majority could direct that this come back sooner. Now, Mr. Hood, I think he's going to bring it back no later than 6 months, and he's going to bring it back sooner if he could, I believe. But if you wanted to expedite that as a commission through a reconsideration process, I think the first step would be to suspend your rules so you could consider expediting the hearing process. So that's a 5-vote majority you would need.
Could that be done at the same time as a reconsideration hearing?
I think so, because if you can get 5 votes to suspend the rules, I don't see why that could not also include direction that the matter also be put on the August 5th agenda, or whenever you want to hear it.
But it'd be 2 separate agenda items, probably.
I don't think so. I think I'm not sure where you're going with that. What I envision, if you make a motion to suspend the rules for this motion and to direct it be put on the August 5th agenda, for example, and you got 5 votes for that, I don't see why you need to have a separate vote to get 4 votes to put it on the agenda. You could break those up if you wanted to, but I think you have some discretion there as well.
Okay, Commissioner Stark?
I'm a trifle confused, not unusual. I was under the impression that the 2/3 vote was the vote to reconsider, in our case 5. And that once you reconsidered it, then you would determine when you wanted to hear the substance of the reconsidered motion, but the reconsidered motion would be subject to the same majority vote as the original motion. I could be wrong on that. It's all governed by our rules, I suppose.
Maybe I misunderstood. So yes, the motion to reopen the matter, to suspend the rules, is a 2/3 majority vote. Then once you get past that hurdle, the motion to reconsider is a simple majority vote, and it must be made by a person who is in the majority at the prior hearing. Are we saying the same thing?
Yeah, I think we are.
Okay.
I think that's the way it works.
And then I would offer further that Mr. Welt was in the majority at the last hearing, and I think Mr. Stark, sitting for Mr. Welt, could be considered a person in the majority who would be eligible to make that motion.
Thank you. Through the chair, on the other hand, if I was satisfied with our action last time, I don't need to make a motion, and then it'll come back according to the schedule which we previously agreed. Is that right?
Correct.
That's correct.
Do you want to continue on? There's a second part to it?
That was, did I leave something out? Let me look. That's the process to take it under.
Okay, so
let's see. I think I covered it, Mr. Geyer. Is there something in particular you want me to speak to?
No, we're good. So there's 2 parts to it. One is to suspend, the other is the motion, but it has to be by a person in the majority.
That's correct.
Oh, I thought my light was burnt out down there. Oh, good, thank you. I'd like to see, instead of us going through this revote and rehashing this thing and spending the next several months arguing about how we voted, considering the fact that we did receive 39 people that, letters from 39 people that weren't heard, and some of the comments by the people that voted in the majority stated in that meeting that they were swayed by the amount of people that were on the side that they voted for. So I think that has some bearing, but rather than argue about it going forward, I'd like to see this item on our agenda and to continue to monitor the progress. What I heard today is that they are considering both proposals. They're not going down the path of just a Los Olivos plan, not looking at a merger or utilizing San Ynez CSD. So I'd like to see us monitor that progress, and if we feel that the progress isn't going forward like it should, then I would like us to reconsider what the action we did and get this on quicker than December. But let's continue to monitor this and stay ahead of it so that we're not blindsided in December and find out nothing's happened. So that's my request, is that we do continue to have this agendized so that we can monitor the progress.
As an information item. Yeah, okay.
We don't need any motions to reconsideration to do that. A simple direction. They put a regular information report on the agenda.
Unless you want to make a motion to that.
No, I do, if you don't mind. I don't know where on the agenda it is. I have 2 items that I'd like the commission to consider at a later time, and they're pretty simple. One is, I noted Mr. Dillon wrote an opinion to us on what constitutes a serial meeting under the Brown Act and as to discussion. And I would like the commission to consider making that public. If I understand it's confidential, the commission holds the privilege. I think that the opinion would be of general benefit to the public to know that, and there's no secrets that we're giving away. So if we could put that on an agenda to waive the attorney-client privileges to that, I'd appreciate considering that. And the second thing, I'm not sure if it's worth considering in the context of amending our policies, but I do think in the light of the recent events that we've experienced, that we ought to seriously consider having a rule on what is late hits, what we will accept and when, and put that on the agenda, either in connection with the policies or as a separate item at a future meeting.
Absolutely. I've talked to Paul quite a bit about that, and I believe something will come forward to the commission for that.
Is this commission
Yes,
discussion?
yes.
Okay. I guess from a personal standpoint, a lot of us serve on councils and other technical committees and so forth, and it's amazing now the flood of last-minute emails. And I have to say, a couple times, I've gotten out of the shower, getting ready to go, and maybe clicked on the computer, and I've got 5 things on my computer to address or study, and I'm on my way to make a decision on that very issue. And so I guess from the standpoint that I don't sit in front of a computer 24 hours a day, as I don't think anybody else does too. So it's paramount that people are prudent in getting their information to whoever, and Jacqueline is the source that gets moved on to us. But just from a personal view, it's harrowing when you get emails at the last minute, or even the next day at a meeting someone says, oh, I sent you an email. It's just impossible to stay on top of that. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Wolf?
Thank you. Well, I agree with that, but and maybe you can answer this, because it sounded to me, and I know that there was some information from you, Mr. Hood, but on this email issue where there was one email with a lot of attachments, I thought I heard from Ms. Hauser that this actually came in earlier, that it wasn't necessarily the last day, but I could be mistaken. When did that email come? And it could, again, if it was a mistake, it was a mistake, but it's not, I don't believe it was a last minute group of emails, but I could be wrong. Could you just remind us about that?
I'm not really sure when it came in. I think I don't know if Mike, Tuesday?
And our meeting was Thursday.
Yeah, 2 days
So
before.
it wasn't like it was the last day or the night before.
No, but there were 2 emails from the same person. I think that's why it was overlooked.
Right,
One
and
had
so
an
that, what
attachment
I'm
and one
saying
didn't.
is that is an understandable issue as far as staff is concerned, that there was some, that there was that error. But it's not like it was, that morning or the night before. So I think in some ways we do have to acknowledge, I think as Mr. Morehouse said, that this was a group of emails that that this commission did not see, and we did not have available in making the decision like we had with other emails. So,
Mr. Chair, you know, the Brown Act requires us to publish an agenda 72 hours before the meeting, at least 72 hours. Any communication to the entire body as one email should not be received after the agenda is published. If there's individual emails to individual members, that's a different story. But an email to the body should be received by the time the agenda is published, not after, for us to consider. That would be my recommendation, and allow, if individual members of the public want to contact each commission member individually, that's fine, that's the way it is. But to hear an issue for the body and to receive the email after the publication of the agenda is not fair and it's not warranted.
Commissioner Seves?
Thank you. We're supposed to be discussing setting up something for a future agenda, right? Not debating the issue. And this has gone too long. Our agenda, when it's distributed, it says that materials related to an item on the agenda submitted after distribution of the agenda will be available for public inspection during normal business hours, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would move that we have this agendized so that we can have a definitive time that we will cut off the receipt of public comments, not only because it's unfair to us. We get something on the day of the meeting, 9 times out of 10 I don't read it because I want to listen to the public as they're speaking to us. But more importantly, the public needs to know what information we're receiving and using to make our decision. And if we're getting last minute, the public's not getting it, the clerk's not going to be able to make copies of it. So I would move that, and in discussion, I would move that this be agendized so the commission can make a determination as to cutoff date on when we receive public comment.
Yeah, I think on our consent agenda, we moved policy stuff to September. Yeah, so I think that's what we'll do is we'll plan towards September having it.
Would that be kept as a separate item?
Yes, an action item. Okay. Bill?
Are you going to, is there a second on the motion, or are you just giving direction?
Direction,
from the
just
chair?
direction.
Is that okay,
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Aceves?
As long as there's consensus, I just want this to end.
So we'll put it on the
Yeah.
September agenda.
No, we already have it. Yeah. All right, if there's nothing else, the meeting's adjourned.